All right.
All right, mate. It's so tense when that countdown
I know.
comes in. It's
We
like
get-
a
We
rocket
get this
launch.
5-second countdown, and then it's like awkward. It's like, who's going to talk first? I don't know.
If only we planned who was going to talk first,
Yeah,
like
that
regular
level of planning
podcasters. Yeah.
it's kind of beyond us, to be honest. Episode 5. Who'd have thought it? Here we
Oh,
are.
we're on 5, are we? Nice. We're
Yeah.
recording this is our first podcast recording of 2025.
It is. Although we're releasing all of our episodes all at once this week, so people aren't going to know that. What's the etiquette
No.
when it comes to recording podcasts? Do you acknowledge the date?
I don't think a lot of people do, but I like to break the fourth wall
Yeah.
because I'm edgy. And also, I'm mindful of the fact that the topic we're going to be discussing today is contingent on dates to a certain extent.
Okay.
So, I know.
Wait,
that's,
have we
that's,
prepared
that-
which-
that's a teaser, isn't it?
It is a teaser. Have we prepared which topic we're talking about today? Because that's news to me.
Yeah, well, it might not be. We have, yes, but it might not be abundantly obvious why dates need to be involved.
No,
but
that's
they
what's-
do. I'm actually not going to tell you why. I'd rather just leave you cold.
Okay, that's because that's what threw me a little bit at the start there.
Can we talk about Christmas and New Year, or is it too late for that?
Well, in one of the earlier episodes, we talked about December a little bit. So I don't know. Anyway, we're recording these and then releasing them when we feel they're ready for release. And one promise that I made myself, because I'm editing these episodes, and we were talking about this before, I'm now really conscious of how often I say I'm going to make an effort to say less.
Every time we should have a klaxon for every time you say it.
Yeah.
I think that will really
there
help.
might be a klaxon. Yeah, I think there might be a klaxon, Nah, it's not going to work. I've tried something there, but it's not worked.
God, that was a real dangle of the carrot.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Right, so the normal format of these, or at least what we've stumbled upon at the moment, is kind of shitty banter intro. You're right in the depths of that at the moment. Then we get into the topic that we're going to discuss,
Yeah.
and then we do a hot take, and then shitty banter outro.
Yeah, I think that sums up the Send Better Emails podcast perfectly. I had to glance at the name then. It's been that long.
Yeah,
Make sure I'm getting this right.
exactly. So I'm Jamie, and he's James, and we're the Inbox Club. You hate it when I do that, don't you? You don't want us to
Yeah.
do like a formal intro of who we are.
No, it's fine. I appreciate that at some point it needs to be done. It just
Yeah.
makes me wince a little bit.
Okay, well, that's who we are.
And when you start talking about, we do newsletters, that's when it really gets me.
When I get my salesman's hat on. So yeah, we do newsletters. We do CRM. Nah, kidding. Well, we do those things, but I'm not going to go on about it.
Thanks, mate. No, it's good.
Cool.
We need to do that. But yeah, is this the shitty banter intro done?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So, what do you want to talk about today on this
So-
episode? Because we're recording 2 episodes today.
Yeah, we are. Nice fourth wall breaking. I like
Yeah.
it. So we're going to be talking about first-party data and why it matters. Jamie, now that I've revealed that, are you able to figure out why specific dates might be important?
I actually don't.
Okay, nice. That's
But
good.
this is why you're the email marketing genius, and I'm just
Well-
a salesman.
So let's not use the word genius.
What word would be better?
I'm the doer,
The doer.
the email marketing doer.
The doer. Okay, fine. We can
Yeah.
call you. We can call you a doer. Dua Lipa.
I like that.
Yeah. Email marketing Dua Lipa.
Yeah. Shout
Okay.
out to
First
Dua
party
if you're listening.
data. Firstly, what the hell is first party data?
Yeah, so first party data is data that you own. So if your business has an email list, that is your data. You own it. You can take it wherever you want. You can export it. You can keep it on your system. And that's what we are referring to when we say first party data. So an email list is first party data. Your LinkedIn followers, their names are first party data, I suppose, but nothing else about them is. I.e., you could manually sort of take their names down if you wanted to. So you had a list of people that are following you on LinkedIn, but that's about all you can get. So Yes. So that's a difference. And really, when we talk about first-party data, we are polarizing it with audiences on social media. And that is going to be the big dichotomy that we focus on in this episode. Okay. You could rename this episode "Why Your Email List is Better Than Your LinkedIn Following," for example.
I might use that when I upload this to the various platforms.
Nice.
It needs to be snappier though.
It's a bit hookier than first-party data.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, now that we know what it is, why is it so important? And that's quite a broad question, right? But it is super important. Even I know that. But we need to know why. Why is it worth doing a whole podcast episode on? And I would venture you could even do a whole podcast full stop on why first-party data is so important.
Yeah, which luckily we are doing right now.
Yeah, I mean like a whole podcast series.
I see.
So better first-party data or something instead of send better emails.
Yeah, totally. No, you're right. You definitely could, and we could, as with basically every topic, that we could always go into more depth. I would say to succinctly summarize this, in case you're busy and you don't have time to listen to the whole podcast, please do stick around if you can. The reason why first-party data is so important is because of the fact you own it, and owning it means that you are immune to the whims of platforms that own data on your behalf. And so when we think about your audience on social media platforms, we think about the people that actually own that data. Mark Zuckerberg, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of these platforms own the data on your behalf and can do whatever they want with it, and indeed can do whatever they want with your account. When you own your email list, you have the power, you have the autonomy over what to do with it, what to send them, and you're not subject to the decision making of others. Nice. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, I think so. I liked how you called Mark Zuckerberg out by name, but then didn't call out any of the other platform owners or CEOs by name. Is that because you don't know the name of the
because I don't
TikTok
know them
CEO?
exactly. Yeah, I don't know them. And Mark Zuckerberg owns Facebook and Instagram, so Mark Zuckerberg is like a catch-all term for those two platforms.
Yeah,
which saved me a couple of syllables.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Meta might have been the obvious one to go for, but
that's because Zuckerberg's a bit of a mouthful as well.
Yeah, he's in the news. Maybe that's why though. Even Musk didn't get a shout out there in your list of.
I feel ashamed to admit that I did listen to the recent Mark Zuckerberg appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Okay.
It's one of the first Joe Rogan podcasts I've ever listened to. And Mark Zuckerberg spoke for nearly 3.5 hours on it. And wow. I did listen to that. So he's fresh in my mind.
Okay. And did you listen to all 3 hours of that because your girlfriend was away this weekend, just gone?
Yes, exactly that. Yeah, precisely. Okay. So I had a lot of time to listen to stuff.
Fair.
I kind of wish that I'd spent that 3.5 hours doing something else, but it was I was doing it adjacently to things around the house.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Did he have anything interesting to say? Should people listen to
that? No, I don't think so. He does talk quite interestingly about AI and quantum computing and those things, but it's Joe Rogan, so it's kind of under this pretext of pro-Trump, pro-Musk. We won't get into the politics too much, but it was quite political.
Okay.
So
wow, do we need a political leaning in this? I mean, we are fighting for attention. We are neck and neck with Joe Rogan at this point, I think.
True. Yeah, I mean, it's something for us that maybe in our next podcast, which is going to be about subject lines, we can make it incredibly right or left leaning.
Wow. I'm just thinking about that. That could land us in some hot water. Anyway, let's stay apolitical for now. Or maybe one of us could choose each bias.
Yeah, that would be nice.
You choose left and I choose right, and then we can have this kind of back and forth battle of the politics.
You would choose right, wouldn't you?
Oh, well, what would I choose right? Hang on. You're going to get me cancelled now.
Okay, anyway, first-party data.
First-party data. So, okay, so we covered what it is and why it's so important. We covered that it's something that you own and you have full agency over, as opposed to borrowing it, renting it from people like Zuckerberg or companies like Meta. So talk to us about it. People who have gathered, I think actually the first thing I want to ask is how you can gather first party data. And let's talk notionally here, very top level ideas, because, we created a playbook, shout out playbook, on how to grow an email list, but it's high effort, right? It takes a lot of work, as opposed to, in my opinion, it's harder work than growing a social media following.
It is.
Because the step that people take to give you their data and sign up to email communications or SMS or whatever it is, it's a more intentional, it's a more, I guess, high risk step for them. It's a higher investment for them to agree to that and to sign up. So
yeah,
if people want to start building first party data, how can they do it?
Well, yeah, we spoke in the last episode about some of the tactics that people can use. I think the one that we sort of both settled on was this idea of using your immediate networks first. So I think one important thing to say from the outset here is that if you have a big audience on LinkedIn or X or Instagram or whatever your platform of choice is, that isn't a bad thing. And we're not trying to denigrate the importance of having audiences on those platforms. But we want to try and reframe your thinking around those, because you are effectively renting space from these platforms. And, every landlord, as almost every listener will know, some landlords are great and don't really change the terms of your contract too often. And some landlords are nightmares and can pull the rug from under you at any point. And we've seen countless examples of that. And so I think, to answer your question directly, Jamie, I would look at the audiences that you have on these platforms and think to yourself, okay, how can I take a slice of the pie here? How can I turn some of these audience members, some of these followers or subscribers or whatever they are, into first party data, into email addresses that I can take with me, whatever platform I go to or whatever I do. And so, yeah, so I would start by looking in the short term, at least. If you're starting from scratch, I would start by looking at the networks that you're currently in and ask yourself the question, how can I move some of these over to an email list?
Okay, nice. We've also got our first analogy of the episode. We love an analogy, and you've used it, and you've not used the gym one.
I had to. I'm out of love with the gym at the moment, because I went for the first time last Wednesday for ages, and I'm still aching off the back of that. And it's 5 days later. We're recording on a Monday.
Wow. Okay.
So it's embarrassing.
Any sports therapists, nutritional experts want to get in touch with, help James out of his DOMs? That'd be great.
Jamie's tried to give me a couple of massages, and they have not been received well.
No, I mean, they were non-consensual massages, to be fair. So, okay, if we take that analogy then that you use, so you talked about renting and landlords and owning your list. I guess then if we're talking about moving your audience away from platforms, social media platforms, and starting to get some of them onto an email list, maybe that's like a help to buy scheme. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to extend the analogy here, but it's getting tired. But okay, so we I think that's really clear, and I like that analogy of renting to buying and the benefits of those things. You're beholden to a landlord's whims, you're beholden to the terms of your contract. They might let you paint a wall or hang a painting, but there's not much else that you can do without express permission.
Yeah.
And so you're restricted.
I think I really want to twist the screwdriver into this pain point, because it's one thing for me to say, you're renting and your landlord might pull the rug from under you. This isn't some hypothetical. I appreciate that when you're on LinkedIn or you're on Instagram or whatever, you might feel as though you're bulletproof. And if you've got the audience on there, that you are absolutely fine. You're never going to lose that. There are countless examples, Jamie, of this happening to well-established creators. Even creators like Mr. Beast have been mistakenly demonetized on YouTube before. So nobody is safe from this. And this can range. This is the whole spectrum of of change. We're not just talking about an algorithmic change, i.e., your post used to perform well on a certain platform and suddenly you stop getting the likes, you stop getting the impressions, and it's because something about the algorithm has changed. And we've seen that on LinkedIn. Video is becoming more and more important on LinkedIn, says the conventional wisdom. And therefore, some creators on there, and I think creators is probably the right word, even for a platform like LinkedIn, are seeing their impressions dip, their engagement dip, simply because they're not posting video on there, and so they're having to adapt, and obviously not everyone's comfortable with that. And these hugely established audience, I mean, there's a bank on there, for example, that recently posted, it's used as, bless it, it's used as the sort of perfect example for what I'm talking about here. It has 250,000 followers and it's getting 2 or 3 likes every time it posts. It's some Scandinavian bank. I won't say its name because I don't feel like that's fair. But just because you have a big audience, it doesn't necessarily mean that the algorithm is always going to work in your favor. But also we're seeing governmental intervention here as well. And here's where the date comes in, Jamie, because we're recording at the moment on the 13th of January on the Monday. On the 19th of January, it's expected that TikTok will be banned in the US, and that is subject to Supreme Court intervention. I'm not au fait with the politics involved here, so I don't know how likely that is, but it seems to be that in a week's time from recording, probably by the time this goes out, people will know one way or another whether or not it's happened. It looks like TikTok will be banned. And even if it's not banned, that uncertainty is not pleasant for any creators that depend on TikTok to make a living, as plenty do now. So regardless of the platform, Musk buying Twitter, perfect example of how accounts that, you had gotten used to a certain way of posting content and sharing value have suddenly had to reassess everything about their output. And again, this is another platform that some businesses and some creators are dependent on. So in basically every instance, there are examples where accounts have been suppressed, where they've been removed altogether, where the algorithm has changed to basically silence them into non-existence. Email, meanwhile, is that bastion of consistency. Suddenly we have an email list that we own where no matter what we send them, no matter how many swear words we use in the opening paragraph, it's highly unlikely that we're going to be suppressed in the same way. There are still suppression methods that if we start sending spam and the signals that email service providers get suggest that we're sending spam. So, for example, we start getting huge amounts of unsubscribes, we're getting a lot of bounces. Those signals might suggest to Gmails and Apple Mails that, okay, this is something dangerous and something that we need to suppress. We'll move it into spam folders, for example. But generally speaking, we've been sending emails for years to huge audiences, and our open rates, our click rates have remained more or less exactly the same throughout. And that is something that can't be said for any other platform or any other way of communicating with your audience that I know of.
Amazing. Okay, so you've highlighted the difference quite clearly there between kind of social and social media and email, and then obviously the main difference being first party data and third party data. I never like saying first party data because as a British person, I don't pronounce my T's all the time, but there's so many T's in first party data that I feel like I have to.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it sounds out of my mouth.
It makes you sound like a psychopath though when you pronounce the T's with emphasis. First party data.
Exactly. I hate it. There's another example of someone that I know recently who had or has had their Meta account suppressed because of an ad issue, right? And that kind of just completely wrecks the account, and it's actually through no fault of their own, but sometimes people aren't adhering to ad policies, etc. And your account can get restricted. And I'm sure there's people that are listening, well, maybe if there's people listening full stop, but maybe if there's people listening, they've experienced that where ad account quality gets tanked, the visibility of your page is impacted by that. You can't raise more ads. And then Meta support is, really difficult to use, and it's hard to get a hold of anyone. And James witnessed firsthand last week the jubilation that I had when I managed to actually get someone to talk to someone from Meta, and they even rang me, believe it or not.
It was unbelievable. It was even better that person's name was Lucifer.
It was.
Which I don't know whether that says something about Meta as an organization.
Yeah, when that came through and got connected, my jubilation was cut short for a millisecond when the person that had connected to me was called Lucifer, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, this is the final bolt, the final nail in the coffin here. Okay, so again, you've highlighted quite starkly the difference there. So talk to us at this. We've talked about third-party data, or at least, I don't know, third or second social media platforms, I guess.
Yeah, I don't actually know about any of the other parties.
No, I don't.
I've only been invited to one.
No, there's only one party you need to be at, and that's first party anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's the second or third or maybe even fourth, I don't know. We've talked about that. We talked about social media platforms and the woes and the risks associated with that. Let's focus more now on the first party and the real party. And there must be, we don't want to be biased here, right? We want to weigh up pros and cons of everything. And so if we were to look at first party data and the cons associated with that, what do you see as the weaknesses or the cons of first party data compared to other parties?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit. I think the big one is the deliverability, i.e. the likelihood with which we will land in people's primary inboxes, that our emails will get sent. And that is, I suppose, the nearest equivalent to the algorithm, in that it is a bit of a black box. There are a myriad of factors that impact your deliverability score, and it's not entirely clear, if you have bad deliverability, which of those factors is the thing that's preventing you from getting into people's inboxes. And so there are examples, and Jamie, you and I have come across plenty of them, where an account is sending emails that are fine. They're consistent with the whatever it is that the brand wants to sell. They're not spam, in a sense that, that they might be selling something, but they're selling to an audience that have largely consented, etc.
Yeah.
And yet their deliverability score is so low that they're not getting into people's inboxes. They're going into spam. There's lots of bounces. They're being rejected by spam filters. And it means that their open rates, their engagement are all incredibly low. And obviously that's incredibly frustrating for them, because it's not like Gmail or Apple Mail or whatever it is says to you, if you just remove this word and change this, then, you'll be fine and we'll let you back in. Then, we'll do a separate episode about deliverability, no doubt. But that is the big negative. I would say the second negative for first-party data is that whilst the unchanging format of platforms like Gmail is pointed to as a reason why first-party data is great, and as well it should be, the fact that Gmail is basically the same platform it was, give or take a couple of extra folders, 20 years ago, that's pointed to as a reason why you should invest in your first party data. The other side to that coin is that if they do ever make a change, it might throw everything up in the air. If Gmail one day decides that, okay, all business comms are going into this folder that nobody's ever going to click on, that would be a huge problem for brands. And it's started to go down that route. A lot of Gmail users have the promotions folder, for example, and other email servers might follow suit, and suddenly you end up in a place where no matter what you're sending as a brand, because you are a brand, you're being moved into a separate place. So that could also become a big problem. Ultimately, I think the solution to both of these things is to send better emails, as the podcast suggests.
There we go.
And I think
beautiful.
Thank you. And I think doing that means we get good engagement, which sends the right signals as far as deliverability goes. And it also means that, ultimately, whenever we look at these platforms, it's the same for LinkedIn. The reason why LinkedIn's algorithm suppresses links is because it wants people to stay on LinkedIn. And to a similar extent, Gmail ultimately wants to create an environment that people are happy to hang out in. And so if you're sending good stuff that people read and linger on and enjoy and reply to and click on, that's all sending signals to I'm using Gmail because it's the most ubiquitously used, but Apple Mail, Yahoo Mail, whatever, Outlook, whatever it might be. All of these platforms want users to stick around. And so sending good emails, sending better emails, increases the likelihood that people are going to stay in their inbox for longer. And that's ultimately what Gmail and its bunch of cronies will be using as warm signals. So send good emails, and I think all of the problems of first-party data start to dissolve away. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. We have to be careful that we don't get into talking about the pros and cons of email marketing versus social media marketing, because that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. We could go on all day about that. What we're talking about is the data. And so if we look at one of the pros of first-party data, is that even if you worked very hard to gather this email list of people, we can't just view it as an email marketing thing, right? It's got to be viewed as a business asset. And so if you've gathered this first party list, you've gathered all this information. And by the way, that's not just email addresses. It might be email addresses. It might be first name, last name. It might be phone numbers. It might be preferences. It might be their purchase history. There are loads of pieces of data that you can gather on people that are worth something to your business. Email address is just one of those. If we start to view that data set as a business asset, then all of a sudden, the pros of that become, the world's your oyster in terms of how you use it. Okay, so you've got SMS marketing. You've got, okay, well, I can pass this list of people that have purchased from us in the last 30 days, and we sell a really high, or purchased from us in the last 6 months, and we have this really high ticket item, and I want to pass it on to the sales team, and they can do personal follow up. We can use the data there to inform a new product based on preferences and what is the most popular. So there's lots of first party data that you can gather that becomes all of a sudden not just about marketing, but about how it informs you run your business, and that is then viewed upon favorably by people that value your business, will evaluate your business as well. So how much your business is worth can be directly impacted by the quality of first party data you have. So, all of a sudden it's not just this fragile thing, which is a high following on one social media platform. It's this more kind of foundational business asset that is first party data that you can then use to inform lots of things, and you can use in lots of different areas of your business.
Absolutely. I think the message to leave people with here, listeners here, or viewers, is that some people will say that your email list is your most valuable business asset. I think it depends on the business personally, and I say that as an email marketer. I have an incentive to be biased. I actually don't agree that it's always the most valuable asset. If you've got a patent for some technology, for example, that might be more valuable than your email list. But listen, you can have everything else stripped away from you, your social media audiences, your website, everything can be stripped from your business. If you still have that email list, you can rebuild it. And I think that's super important. It is the permanence in your business where everything else might be transitory.
Nice. I think before we started recording this episode, we were like, let's keep this one short. But before you know it, we're like at 29 minutes and however many seconds. I guess the one caveat I would have there is about, it's one thing having all this first party data, but it's another thing having high quality first party data. So we want to make sure that the data that we have is relevant and is, I would go as far as to say, is super relevant, because otherwise it's of no value to your business. So that's the only caveat I would have there. We did it. I was worried about this episode because I thought it was going to be boring, but actually first party data isn't boring.
I mean, not to us. Well, it remains to be seen whether our valued listeners agree. But I'm sure we'll find out one way or another. Let us know if you managed to listen to this and got this far, then, well, presumably that already we've got a slightly biased audience because they made it this far. The people that found it boring, like, left 20 minutes ago. But let us know, was this boring or not?
We might even gather some first-party data on how people will listen to this episode and the drop-off and etc. Who knows?
Yeah.
I would just like to point out before this episode, James changed the darts on his dartboard behind him. If you're listening and not watching, you're not getting the benefit of this. But is that a manufactured 180 behind you? Can you
I mean, obviously I don't need to manufacture it. And if you'd given me 5 minutes, I would have got an organic one. But I thought for the sake of making sure we start recording on time, that's just a reflection of reality when I play darts.
Okay, fine.
I think that's important to stress.
Okay. Well done. Okay, perfect. I think that pretty much wraps us up for this one. Thanks for listening. We're going to jump on and record another episode straight away now.
Yes, it's going to be about subject lines. So tune in for that.
See you in a bit.
Bye.
Bye.